What does $1,000,000, six-pack abs, and designing Pokemon professionally have in common? I want all three, but I'll probably never have any of them. I decided to go ahead and just design my own starter Pokemon because it seemed like a fun thing to do, and why not? Like, I got a YouTube channel, I can draw, I like Pokemon, all these things are falling into place here, so you see where I'm going with this. Let's check it out, see what I ended up coming up with. So, obviously we're going to go through this in the same order that you would typically go through if you were looking at the Pokedex. By that, I mean we're going to be looking at the grass starters first, the fire starters second, and then the water starters third, just because that's the order they typically go in the Pokemon games. I gotta be honest, I can't take full credit for the grass starters here. I was texting my friend Wes trying to come up with some ideas, and he had the idea of a woolly mammoth Pokemon. Traditionally, a lot of the starter Pokemon, specifically the grass ones, are based off of how animals have naturally evolved over time. So that's why you start off with dinosaurs, and then you get a bird later on, and then eventually you go to mammals. So I think a woolly mammoth would still fit kind of in there comfortably. I know the last starter was Sprigatito, which is a cat. So maybe like, like saber-toothed tigers were around at the same time as woolly mammoth. Is that a fact? I don't know if that's a fact or not. In my head they are. According to Ice Age they are. And really, like, that's all the information we need. So I decided that was pretty good. We will roll with that. I noticed on True Green 7's channel, he has, which I don't watch very often, I've watched a few of his videos before, and they're very good. It kind of did help inspire me to make this video. And so if you end up liking this, definitely go check out his channel. It looks like he's already made a mammoth Pokemon, or at least a grass elephant or something. I didn't watch the video. I think mine's going to look completely different than his, and I designed this before I ever saw his, so... But, nothing's original anymore. So I started off with a baby elephant kind of design. It's like the best reference I have. I've never seen a baby mammoth before. I mean, there's pictures of them and stuff, obviously. So, like I said, I went with the basic design. Wanted to do, leaves for the ears that might seem a little bit basic, but it's still cute. I did kind of give it this hair all around its head that... It looked like a bunch of pictures of baby mammoths did have, because obviously woolly mammoths are very hairy, so the babies are going to be a little hairy, but I thought it looked a little bit too much like a human haircut, so I decided instead to give it these three little leaves on the top of its head. Going on from there, it is a pretty simple design. I didn't want to make it too complicated. Threw a little leaf at the tip of the tail, and then I decided to just mix it up a little bit more because it looked a little plain and gave it a little design. I kind of, when I was doing that, had in mind about how, when you look at a tree or you cut a tree in half, how it's got the rings, so I kind of did a little spiral thing there. And so after that's all said and done, may I introduce you to our very first Pokemon, Ellisprout. He's a friendly little guy. He's a little shy, but, get him in a comfortable environment and he'll become really playful. How I decided to go about designing these starter Pokemon is I drew the first and the last evolutions first. It depends on which one we're talking about, but in this case I drew the baby mammoth first, and then I jumped right to the third form. And then for the middle stages, I just kind of was like, okay, what's the in-between process in between these two? And that's how I came up with all the middle stages. As to whether or not I'm showing you guys in that order, I have not decided yet, but obviously you would have found out by the time you're watching this video. Now for the second evolution, like I said, I wanted it to kind of be a middle stage, obviously, between the first and the third. What else would it have been? So it was really just trying to find a good balance of what features from both of them I needed to incorporate. So he's got a little bit more, let's just call it hair or vines or whatever. His tusks are made of wood this time. A little bit more elaborate designs on his body with the swirls and everything, just to kind of give it a little bit more personality, make it a little less plain looking. Without further ado, may I introduce to you Mammoth. I also imagine that these Pokemon love to mud bathe, so if you see them out in the water, you might only see the green half of them, and then when they get out, I don't know, it's just a visual I had in my head. Going into the final stage, wanted to keep the leaves as the ears, but this time they have a few holes in them. They're much bigger, they're older leaves, and I decided to put a bunch of moss and vines all over the mammoth, really make him really shaggy. I was going to make the tusks wood and make them like big, strong branches, but I decided the coloring of like stone would kind of look better. So I figured like a grass and rock type would be a good combination. So his toes are also just big old rocks. I decided to add some moss to the tusks, kind of make them look like they're aged. And the design on the body itself was supposed to look like layers of dirt almost. Yeah, I really ended up liking this design. I thought it was a lot of fun. Thanks for the idea, Wes. I had fun, drawing the guy. This is the final evolution, and he's called Mamos. I tried to make him about the same size and weight as like a woolly mammoth would have been, so he's a pretty big starter. He's known as a gentle giant. They live in herds and protect weaker forest-dwelling Pokemon from predators. He's very friendly towards humans and Pokemon, and he is half rock type. Now moving on to our fire starter. So again, traditionally, Pokemon for the fire starters are based off of a Chinese zodiac. So I was like, well, that's a great place to start. And I started looking at some of the Chinese zodiacs to see what hasn't been done yet. And there was several options, but the one that really stuck out to me was an ox. Like, I feel like there's a lot of good potential there. So I went with that. And I started off drawing like pretty much a regular baby bison or a regular baby ox, just to kind of get a feel for it. And after I got that done, I decided to make it a bit more stylized, a bit more Pokemon-ish, and not like a real animal with just like fire on its tail or something. Which, I mean, spoiler, it's essentially what it does become, but it at least looks more like a Pokemon. So I shortened the body a little bit, kind of gave him a bit more of a cartoonish features, because, Pokemon's been doing that a lot. And, of course, I did make fire for the tail. I just thought it looked good. I considered doing other things, but that's what we're going with here. And I also had the idea that maybe when this Pokemon gets, like, really heated, or when he's about to attack or something, his hooves will actually get really hot and burn or singe whatever he decides to kick. Like, they'll like kick their back legs and stuff. So that's what I went with. It took me a good while to actually find some coloration that I felt worked with this Pokemon. I experimented with a couple different things. I ended up landing on this. So again, allow me to introduce you to Caferno. I really tried hard on these names. Like that was one of the hardest parts for me, was coming up with the names for these things. So he's clumsy, he's friendly, and the flame on its tail will burn brighter when he's angry, but it loves to play with children and other Pokemon. As for the shiny version of the grass starters, I kind of wanted it to reflect like a fall theme. So, instead of like the greens and everything, they're like oranges and yellows. For the shiny versions for the fire starters, I wanted it to be a little reminiscent of Paul Bunyan's ox. It was a blue ox. So that's kind of what I was thinking for the shiny versions of the fire starters. So keeping that in mind, I made them blue. For the second evolution, I eventually want this thing to kind of be reminiscent of a Minotaur. So he's standing up on his hind legs, and I know, I'm not the biggest fan of bipedal starters either, okay? But sometimes it's okay. Not all the time. Like, don't make every starter bipedal, okay? I don't necessarily want to feel like I'm playing the game with, like, someone in a fursuit. However, a Minotaur, obviously, is half man, half bull, so it's going to start standing on its hind legs, okay? I considered making a version where he doesn't stand on his hind legs, but you know what? We did what we did. So, like I said, the middle evolution is pretty much just going to be the in-between stage, obviously, between the first and the third. He's standing upright, he's starting to get his horns, he's a bit angrier, he's got the ring in his nose, and I kind of kept rolling with that. Like on the first stage, I put a ring around his neck, and this one's also got rings. I didn't know what I was going to do with that, if they were eventually going to have something to do with the fire or not. After that's all said and done, we end up with our second stage to our fire starter, Imbull. He is much more temperamental than his previous evolution. He will charge just at about anything or anyone that's unfamiliar with, mostly because it gets confused easily and it gets angry when it gets confused. Again, he's still not the brightest, so he doesn't know how to handle the confusion other than to just attack. Moving on to our final evolution for the fire starter. As you can see, I did entertain the idea of them being on all fours, but that's when I got the Minotaur idea. So I pivoted immediately, and I also was trying to think of other things to be inspired by this ox. I know we keep calling it an ox and a bull, but you know, it's all going to pretty much be, it's all in the same family, right? I started to think about what does an ox/bull and fire have in common? And immediately, of course, my mind went to the famous torture device, the Brazen Bull, where, I don't know if you guys know this, they would put a human in a giant bronze bull that was shaped like a bull and everything, and then set a fire underneath it to where the human would essentially cook alive in this hot metal contraption. So, you know, everywhere you're touching, your flesh is essentially melting off. And the way they made it is like if you screamed, it would make like bull noises. I'm getting a little off topic here, but I did have that in mind when I was thinking of the Ox Fire starter, so I wanted to implement that. So I thought a half steel type evolution would be pretty cool with that. And I decided to give him like an oven on his stomach, and I mean, he can be friendly and like cook things for his young in there, or he can throw his prey in there and cook it alive, and I don't know, maybe he eats it that way. I don't imagine he'd have to take it out of his stomach to put it in his mouth so it goes back into his stomach. I don't know, but that's what I decided to go with. I thought it was a pretty neat idea, and since he is half steel, again, the hooves, they do heat up, so he'll, you know, that's going to be mega hot and everything. But then I decided to also give him metal hands, so if he's really mad, they get glowing red hot as well, so he's got like solid fire punches. And then the horns also get super hot. I just, you know, I think it ended up being a pretty neat little design. And that, my friends, is how I came up with the final evolution of the fire starters, Oxinerate, which I kind of like that name, if I'm being honest. And the pattern continues. He's even more temperamental than his previous evolutions. Again, he does remain loyal to his trainer, because why would they give these starter Pokemon to children if they're just going to be giant murder machines? So, you know, he does have a sweet side to him. Like I said, he can use his oven belly to cook for things. And I kind of had like a couple images in my head of like this was in a Pokemon anime where he's sitting around being all happy and they're like making some bread in the oven or something. Does that mean he's pregnant? Are they cooking a Dachshund? I don't want to think about this too much. Anyway, that's Oxinerate, number 6 in my little fake Mon Pokedex. And now we are moving on to the water starters. So again, trying to keep up with the tradition of how Pokemon typically decides their starters. The water starters are always semi-aquatic animals, so it's not going to be like just a straight up fish, you know what I mean? It's going to be something that can walk on land too most of the times. Trying to think of some semi-aquatic animals that they haven't used yet. I kind of just Googled a list of them, but platypus stood out to me, and I was like, that's great, why haven't they made a platypus starter yet? Anyway, so that's what we rolled with. I started off just kind of drawing a regular platypus, and I wanted to give it some extra features to make it more Pokemon-esque. I didn't want it to look like Perry, obviously, because that would be a crossover that I wouldn't have expected, though I did really have to fight the urge to put a hat on this thing. The beak I thought was a little too Disney at first, and a platypus beak really is just kind of flat, so I did kind of straighten that out to where the beak almost resembles something like a Psyduck, and I decided to to make it a little bit more unique. The beak kind of goes around the eyes a little bit as well. And when I was designing these, my kid came in, he was like, you should put a bubble on its head. And I was like, that's a great idea. So we start off to eventually kind of foreshadow the bubble on its head. He just has like a little dot on his head in between his eyes there. It's not a bubble quite yet. You'll see. You guys will see. I don't want to spoil anything just yet. Anyway, add a little stripe for design and color him in, and that's how we get our first evolution of the water starter, Yucky Duck. Now, Yucky Duck is definitely a bit of a prankster. He likes to pull all kinds of pranks, and I'm using pranks with quotation marks because they're not really that creative. It's about the same amount of prank that you'd get from like a YouTube video a lot of the times. For instance, one of his favorite pranks is just squirting water in people's faces. I also thought it would be cute if whenever he does pull a prank, he's very entertained with himself, so he slaps his tail on the ground almost like he's applauding. Moving on to his second stage. Again, I'm just repeating myself at this point, but trying to make it an in-between stage before the first and the final evolution, so you're kind of going to get a little bit more of a previews of what the last stage is going to look like. He's bigger, he's more mischievous, and I kind of wanted the beak around his eyes to start to look a little bit more like a mask, because that's kind of what it's based off of. I'll go ahead and tell you guys right now, I'm kind of basing this off of a platypus and like a supervillain at the same time. That's what it's eventually going to be. So he's a bit ornery, and that's why he likes the pranks and everything. That's why it'll steal. But yeah, he's just essentially a bigger Yucky Duck. He's got claws on his flippers now. The bubble on his head is getting a bit bigger. I'm not going to tell you what it's for just yet. After kind of sticking with the same color scheme and everything, and after a few final touches, we have Splatipus. Like I said, going to be based off of his supervillain eventually, so he will often steal things just to see people's reactions. I mean, in my head, he's okay with giving it back, but also in my head, they sometimes take it to like an underwater den and just keep it, and they're like hoarders. I don't know, I haven't decided. Maybe I want to stick with the hoarder thing, but again, I don't know why they would just give all these like evil Pokemon to children, so there's got to be some redeeming qualities, I would say. So they can be hard to train because they are so mischievous. However, they are super loyal to their trainer. Moving on to the last evolution of the water starters. I gotta take a break and tell you guys something here. I am disappointed in myself because I honestly forgot to hit record when I was drawing the final stage for the water starter. So, you're just gonna have to watch me like reveal it in this weird way. I'll try to do it to where it's still kind of entertaining to look at. Anyway, the final evolution is going to be water and poison type, which brings me to the bubble on its head. The bubble on its head it contains a lot of excess poison that can help store and pump it to its claws and the spikes on its tail. This is also the same for the previous evolution, Splatipus. However, Splatipus is still just a water type. You can just learn poison type moves, but the final form is half poison type. So he's got big old claws on his hind legs because I don't know if you guys knew this, but a platypus is venomous. It's only venomous on its hind legs. So I decided to really put a lot of emphasis on that and made its hind legs huge. And I also gave it a huge spike going completely through both sides of the tail, almost like if you put a big old nail in a baseball bat is kind of what I was thinking about. The beak kind of curls up into a horn to help protect the bubble on its head. And it's also got a couple fangs that kind of look like vampire fangs, honestly. But like I said, it's kind of based off of a supervillain. I don't know why I decided to go this route with the platypus, but I'm really glad I did because I think it looks really cool. And that's how we get Platycide, to kind of make it even more supervillainy, because this guy is pretty devious looking. It has been known to paralyze its prey and eat it alive to keep it fresh. But yeah, those are my starter Pokemon that I made up. What did you guys think? Were they decent? Were they awful? Which one would you choose as your starter? Me personally, I'm going with Yucky Duck. I love Yucky Duck's design. I love the water and poison's a great type combination. Poison's one of my favorite types to begin with. I think the names are cool, especially Platycide. I'm really happy with that one. Let me know what you guys think. Who would you choose? And if I should keep this series going, because I did have a lot of fun making it. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. I appreciate you guys for watching. Please leave the video a like and share it with someone who you think might also enjoy it. It really would help the video out a whole lot. Let's try to get this over 100 views. If we can get this over 100 views and maybe over 25 likes, consider it a win. That's my goal for this video, at least. Again, appreciate you watching. Feel free to check out some of the other videos on my channel. This is the first one where I designed Pokemon, but I think I might end up making more of these. If you want to watch me draw some other stuff, there's a whole playlist of that. I mean, you should check out my shorts. I got tons of shorts of me doing a bunch of 30-second drawings. In fact, I'm drawing the entire Kanto region in 30 seconds. Not like all 151 in one 30-second segment. I think that would be impossible. But I'm taking 30 seconds to draw each one of them, and I'm releasing them as shorts. I'll probably end up making a compilation video after I'm done. But yeah, feel free to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm going to quit repeating myself so much now. I really just hope you guys enjoyed it, and I sincerely hope you have a good rest of your day. Yeah, peace out, Girl Scouts. Bye.